Committee members, the clerk has advised me we have a quorum, and therefore I will call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 129 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format according to rules adopted by the House of Commons. Meeting members and witnesses are appearing virtually as well as in the room. I would like to remind those attending virtually and in the room during the course of the meeting, if you wish to get my attention, please raise your hand and wait until I recognize you by name. Also, you have the option of choosing to participate in the official language of your choice by using interpretation services. In the room, make sure you're on the English channel if you want to hear in English, French, en français. Those appearing virtually, click on the globe icon on the bottom of your surface and choose the official language of your choice. If there's a breakdown in interpretation services, please get my attention. We will suspend while it is being corrected. Also, those appearing in the room, again, can remind you, as well as myself, with devices, please turn off any alarms, or if they're on vibration, turn those off as well, because the sound will affect the translators. As well, please avoid touching the microphone boom, because, again, it can cause hearing issues. So today, in the first hour, I would like to welcome our witnesses, Gaétienne Royer, Chief Executive Officer from Massive Canada Building Systems Incorporated, appearing in person. Daryl Searles, President of Lodestar Structures Incorporated. And appearing virtually is Paul de Baraday, Vice President, Building Standards and Engineering at Residential Construction Council of Ontario. I will be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be really quick here because I know that we have witnesses. But similar to what occurred at another meeting, I thought I should just bring up really quickly that we had received a letter from the CNIB, and Ms. Raba's letter highlighted the committee's concerns about barriers to accessibility being created at the committee, and Ms. Raba wrote that during her audio test that staff informed her that, quote, there were no issues in the quality of the device being used. And of course, the perspectives of Canadians who are blind, deafblind, or have low vision should not be rendered inaccessible to any committee. And so I'm hoping that just really quickly we can have consent from members to remedy this issue by asking that the chair apologize to Ms. Raba on behalf of the committee for the barrier to access, and that the chair provide an explanation to Ms. Raba and all committee members in writing as to why her audio test was deemed successful but then not allowed to participate, and that we invite Ms. Raba to reappear at the committee for 1 hour. And how we can easily accommodate this is the committee had agreed last week to leave the study open pending the appearance of the minister for an hour, and therefore the study is still open, and we can just easily have an additional hour scheduled for Ms. Raba. And my one suggestion could be, so that it doesn't take away from other committee businesses, that we do have other times in the future where we'll be looking at drafting instructions. And so maybe we can just tighten that meeting up, or maybe even just ask for written submissions, because drafting instructions really are just getting feedback from committee members, you know, how we want the analysts to write a report. And so that might be a way of maybe adding in that extra hour very easily. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I completely agree with the member. Thank you for bringing this forward. I have two suggestions.
Yeah, I don't want this to get to it.
I have two suggestions. Number one, it would be, I think that we may want to formally request through the House of Commons just a snapshot of what's actually going on, like why is this occurring with different technologies. So, you know, maybe getting the House of Commons to look into building more compatible systems that work with our system, and, you know, collaborate with CNIB and other groups to see what technology we should incorporate. The second thing I would suggest, Mr. Chair, is that we should add the vice chairs of the committee onto that letter that comes from you, so they know it's not only from the chair, it's from the vice chairs as well.
I just had a quick thing to add. I noticed too in that letter that the witness was mentioned that she was in rural Canada. So I think too, if there's something that, Chair, you could just maybe make note of, if we're requesting testimony from those that live in rural Canada, sometimes we don't get a headset in a day. Sometimes it takes, unfortunately, up to 7 business days for us to receive that. So if that could be just taken into account as well.
I don't want to belabor. We have witness here. There seems to be consensus. I, as your chair, are agreeable. Mr. Coteau is a good position. It will come from the full committee, including the vice chairs. We will prepare, and I'll circulate that with the vice chairs before it goes out. We don't need a formal motion that there is agreement. It's agreement on this. So again, thank you, Ms. Gray, Ms. Falk, Mr. Coteau. So Mr. Royer, Royer or Royer? Royer?
Royer is fine.
Royer, for 5 minutes, and I will advise when your 5 minutes is up. Mr. Royer, you have 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Gaëtan Royer. I'm the CEO of Massive Canada. In my 40-year career as a military engineer, a city manager, and urban planner, I worked on tens of thousands of housing units. I worked with many general contractors who somehow managed...
Yeah, it's a noise like a fan. I think it's this projector or something it's making it hard to hear. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well, continue, Mr. Roy. It will be adjusted. Mr. Roy? Actually, if you want to start, go. Mr. Roy? Yeah. Mr. Roy, please start over again. Start from the start.
Okay. My name is Gaëtan Royer, CEO of Massive Canada. In my 40-year career as a military engineer, city manager, and urban planner, I worked with tens of thousands of housing units, worked with many general contractors who somehow manage the chaos of a construction site. Almost every project faced mistakes and delays, and hundreds of times I shook my head saying there has to be a better way. So 3 years ago with Massive Canada, I decided to work on delivering a better way to build. We need 3.5 million homes. We have all levels of government, including the Canadian government, providing direct investments, assistance, and grants and loans. So we have the highest demand ever and the highest government incentives of decades. In any sector, this would be a fantastic opportunity. So why aren't we building faster? The answer is low productivity. Productivity flatlined 60 years ago. We bring 1 million pieces to a construction site, and we assemble them by hand. The industry is fragmented with too many subcontractors and suppliers crowding each site, making site coordination a nightmare. We can't keep using the same slow methods and expect faster results. That would be insanity. It's not far-fetched to compare modular construction to cars and rockets. Ford went from 1 car per month to 1 car every 93 minutes in 1914. NASA took 8 years to build 1 rocket. SpaceX builds 4 rocket engines per day. So those who disrupt an industry that way use the same recipe. They spend as much time designing the industrial process as they spend designing the product. Massive Canada spent 3 years designing our assembly lines and 3 years to design our new products. We're first to combine the remarkable strength of mass timber with the speed of modular construction. We trademarked a series of products called CondoCore to build modular apartments. We moved every part of an apartment that's time-consuming to build into a factory environment. CondoCore is the kitchen, bathroom, water heater, electrical panel, wiring, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, smart home systems, and kitchen cabinets. So we move everything that's tough to build inside that box. And think about this. The wall between the living room and the bedroom in a condo apartment costs nearly nothing to build. But the core, the mechanical systems, that's where trades spend months on their knees to install plumbing and on ladders to wire lights. 70 to 75% of the value of an apartment is inside that core. So we pack all that in a module that is roughly the size of a shipping container. Condo cores are load-bearing, and we can stack them up to 12 stories, just like Lego blocks. Our first plant will produce 2,500 units per year by the end of 2026. And you can imagine large machines and automation at that scale will never be available on a construction site. The catch is that off-site manufacturing requires huge capital investments. We secured a $10 million grant from the BC government, and we applied for a matching federal grant. Massive Canada achieved national brand recognition earlier this year when I was featured in Maclean's Power List of 100 Canadians shaping the country. Thanks to my team for that. One of our directors operated a plant that produced over 1 million appliances per year. So through his eyes, a 15-minute construction task is 5,000 hours to take away from the assembly line. Studies show that mass timber and precast can save months from framing the structure. Condo core can save 10 to 12 months on site. I urge Canada to invest in industrialized construction. Our company has an approved shovel-ready 124-unit rental housing building waiting for our manufacturing plant. We need federal government support right now to de-risk our manufacturing equipment for our first plant in BC and our second plant in Ontario. That's my 5 minutes, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Oh, thank you, Monsieur Royer, for being under time. Mr. Searles, 5 minutes, please.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Daryl Searles. I'm the president of Lodestar Structures and co-inventor of the Lodestar building system. I'd like to thank, first of all, the team at Lodestar for entrusting me in this meeting, and I'd like to thank the committee members for having me here today. It's a great honor for me to be able to share my perspective on the housing crisis that's gripping our nation and causing so much of our population to come under stress. Lodestar is a company driven by a mission to transform the building industry. The mission is rooted by our belief that every human being deserves a warm, safe, affordable place to call home. Our core values emphasize responsibility, and we are committed to developing scalable building solutions that not only address our current challenges, but also foster resilient and inclusive communities. At Lodestar, we are laser focused on a first principle design approach and the use of advanced manufacturing. Our goal is to enable every community with the opportunity to have access to high quality, rapidly produced housing solutions. As we confront the pressing housing crisis in Canada, we must do so responsibly, protecting our environment and driving down costs, committing to the highest bars regarding environmental and social governance. Recent government initiatives, including the National Housing Strategy, have laid the groundwork for addressing these issues through strategic plans and supportive legislation. Unfortunately, we're not seeing sufficient increase in progress nationwide, affirming that much more is needed from our leaders. With millions struggling to find adequate housing, current processes and methods of construction are inadequate to supply the demand. Of the millions in need of adequate housing, many of these are what would be considered gainfully employed citizens, which means the crisis cannot be solved with just more homes. It has to reduce costs. If we are going to successfully solve this crisis, an immediate and an aggressive approach to implementing rapid housing solutions is critical. The growing demand for affordable housing is compounded by rising material and labor costs and shortages. Our skilled workforce is depleting, and the need is growing. Therefore, our response must be multifaceted. Lodestar's innovative building system directly addresses these challenges. Our projects prioritize affordability and responsibility. By utilizing our building system, we can collapse construction time by up to 60% and reduce costs, making it possible to deliver affordable housing solutions at a scale that could solve Canada's housing crisis within 3 years with the proper support. Systems like Lodestar are the solution, and without them, we don't stand a chance. Moreover, we are committed to environmental stewardship. Our approach reduces greenhouse gas emissions, minimizes waste, and reduces energy consumption, aligning with Canada's broader goals of sustainability. Through eco-friendly materials and efficient construction practices, we are setting a new standard for what it means to build responsibly. Government support has been pivotal in our efforts. Past bills and strategies have paved the way for some innovations in housing, but a different approach is needed. We must ensure that regulatory frameworks evolve to embrace advanced technologies, making it easier for companies like ours to implement innovative solutions. The future of home building must embrace advanced technologies and innovative practices. Traditional construction methods are no longer sufficient to meet the growing demands of our population. We envision a paradigm shift towards modular prefabricated systems that allow for quicker on-site assembly and reduced labor costs. This will give regulatory confidence, allowing for vast reduction in government interference. For this shift to occur, collaboration between government, industry, and stakeholders is essential. We must invest in creating new jobs and training the workforce to support these new technologies. In conclusion, Lodestar and other advanced technologies represent a viable solution to the housing crisis we face. By investing in and adopting innovative building systems, we can responsibly enhance housing affordability, availability, and sustainability for all Canadians. Most Canadians are aware of the current state of our housing market. Some are benefiting and some are not. Those who are benefiting are doing so greatly, and those who are not are experiencing struggles that were not thought possible in this great country. This makes me sad, but also very determined. And I would like to encourage this committee to join in my determination to use every influence that you have, every means that we have to solve this situation and to help Canadians get into homes. Thank you.
Mr. Searles, we'll now go to Paul de Baradis for the Residential Construction Council of Ontario. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Paul de Baradis, and I am the VP of Building Standards and Engineering with ResCon. We are the leading association of residential home builders in the province of Ontario, and we build a majority of new housing across Canada's largest province. The motion before the committee today seeks to address issues related to emerging home building technologies and materials along with construction methods, energy efficiency systems, and innovation. We believe that in the midst of the most pressing housing affordability and supply crisis that Canada has ever seen, we must view all associated issues through the lens of prioritizing housing that is affordable for most Canadians. Housing is a human right, the most fundamental right of every Canadian. It is difficult, if not impossible, to be a good employee, a successful student, a fully participant member of any community if you not have a stable, comfortable, and affordable place to live. With respect to advancements in home building technology, our industry is at the forefront of modern building practices. Examples of our leadership in modern building technologies are the vast array of engineered wood products, manufactured roof assemblies, as well as off-site panelized wall and floor systems. The voluntary application of energy efficiency programs has improved the sustainability of Canada's housing stock, and we continue to advance new approaches in recognition of the climate challenges we face in the country and around the world. The private sector home building industry in Canada has embraced modern digital approaches spanning from the design stage through to final product construction. However, most municipalities in Canada are far behind their contemporaries around the world in terms of digital innovations. It is an endless source of frustration for our industry that we are unable to digitally engage with municipal planning and building authorities in a manner that reflects electronic approval services readily available in other jurisdictions. Our industry already has the ability and capacity to perform three-dimensional building design and comprehensive building information modeling with class detection, practices that are being used across the world successfully. However, these digital technologies cannot be fully exploited much beyond the design stage, as municipal approval authorities do not have the ability to integrate these technology platforms into their existing workflows. These digital limitations and lack of data transparency with municipal authorities having jurisdiction play a role in the lengthy development approvals process. CMHC research has found a correlation between the speed of development approvals and housing affordability. Vancouver and Toronto have the slowest planning approvals and in turn have the worst level of housing affordability. Municipalities need to be accountable for the impacts of their approval timelines, which they have on the cost of delivering new housing, and approvals must be streamlined through digitization. The committee's motion makes specific reference to building code issues. Our prevailing concern is that in an attempt to develop a comprehensive model national building code, the result is a sequence of ever-expanding requirements that have a compounding effect on construction costs, leading to new homes that Canadians simply cannot afford to purchase. The code has always represented a minimum standard with the objective of ensuring fire, health and safety, and structural integrity. Mandating measures far beyond these parameters is neither realistic, nor does it consider the cost-benefit realities of delivering housing products to Canadians that they can afford to purchase. Current and future plan updates to the Model National Building Code are attempting to implement a multitude of social objectives, using the code as the enabling regulatory mechanism. It is ill-advised that building codes are increasingly being used now as a vehicle to implement a wide array of social policies rather than focusing on the primary need to facilitate the construction of housing that consumers can afford. The code cycle priorities being carried forward include code harmonization between construction codes across Canada, climate change mitigation through greenhouse gas reductions, climate change adaptation solutions against overheating indoors, alterations to existing buildings, expanding accessibility requirements, fire and life safety of emergency responders, and protecting against future anticipated extreme weather events. We note that the committee seeks to explore policies promoting the adoption of innovation home building technologies and supporting the growth of the construction and home building industry. The reality is simply that if the objective is to support growth and the construction of home building industry across Canada, it is not possible under the given framework, as every 5 years the goalposts are moved in an unpredictable and drastic manner that is not sustainable. We cannot do both. Build more homes people can afford, while at the same time making regulations that preclude the ability to deliver on the overarching responsibility of providing places for people to live. As noted, we as an industry are among the most advanced in the world in terms of sustainability, modern technology applications, and construction techniques that deliver on all these objectives while seeking to maintain affordability for Canadians. We hope that the committee shares our commitments in this regard, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeBarris. Could you pronounce your name for me again so I get it correct?
Yes, it's DeBerardis.
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 DeBerardis. Thank you, Ms. Shore. I also
Thank you.
want to welcome Mr. MP Morantz, who is joining us this morning as well. So we'll begin with the first round of questioning for 6 minutes each. Mr. Aitchison, you have 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here. I actually get very excited when I hear from inventors and innovators like you gentlemen in the room here. There's no question in my mind that the solution to this housing crisis must include innovations like you are both involved in, and so thank you for your commitment to that. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges faced, because the concept of manufacturing homes and manufacturing panels in a factory and putting them on site, that itself is not new, but some of the techniques that are being used are new and innovative, and that's amazing. We've also learned that, one of the biggest challenges facing any home building in this country right now is, in fact, the approvals process to, get a place to put the home, the cost related to that, and all that kind of stuff as well. I'd like to focus today, though, on the regulatory system. We have a national building code, and then provinces have their own building codes, and then sometimes municipalities have, different rules on top of those rules. And so I'll start with Mr. Searles and Mr. Royer. Could you speak to briefly the challenges that you have with the regulatory system that you build something in a factory, you go put it on site, and sometimes there's some confusion about who's responsible for what's correct or not. So start with you, Mr. Searles.
Sure. Yeah. In our experience, the holdup or the thing that's stopping progress is the municipal planning side of things. The process for that is so long that it inhibits progress. And For an example, we can build, and we've had one particular structure built in the city of Kingston for several months now, but it's, I think, pushing around the 2-year process for planning. So that, we were supposed to start installing that back May 1st, and now it's pushed till November 1st. So, that length of a difference in time is considerable. On our end, we have a predetermined or pre-certified plant that all of the rules and regulations are already in place, so we don't necessarily meet a lot of building code issues or a lot of that type of regulatory stoppage, but we do see that the duration of that, from the time somebody says, I want to build this building on this site, to the time that they can actually even apply for a building permit, is what is the big holdup here, and sometimes years.
Thanks for that. Mr. Royer, would you like to comment as well, please?
I guess I was a city manager for 11 years, and I know what happens behind the counter. The city of Port Moody during that time had the highest percentage of construction of any municipality in BC. We need bureaucrats to adopt an entrepreneurial attitude, to be cognizant of the housing crisis, and to get out of the way. One of the recipes would be to have a single list of requirements at the start of a process. Somebody brings an application, here's the list, you do this, you're going to get approval, and not have a multitude of committees turning the crank and adding requirements as you go. People behind the planning counter making decisions about what they like and don't like. It should not be about what you like. It should be about delivering housing quickly, efficiently, and making sure that as you do so, you don't cause issue for the neighbors. Things like the water from a site draining onto somebody else's property. Those are technical issues, and they should be addressed clearly and simply.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'd like to ask Mr. De Berardis, you've written quite a bit on the overly regulated building industry, particularly in Ontario, and you've talked a lot about compliance fatigue, which is described as one of the burdens in the regulatory requirements. I'm wondering though if we can focus on the affordability piece of housing. Does the National Building Code take into consideration or speak to or prioritize in any way affordability in the code?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. The 2025 code priorities, affordability or cost of construction is not anywhere to be found. This is something which differs from the provincial jurisdiction. I know in Ontario, cost benefit, affordability are prime concerns when developing code proposals, but at the national level, unfortunately, it's absent.
Well, we only have 40 seconds, but can you tell me very quickly what's the one biggest change you'd make if you ran the federal government? What would you change in the National Building Code today?
I would implement a much more rigorous cost-benefit criteria before bringing forth proposals. It's really just a bit of a runaway train now, and in the midst of a housing affordability crisis, to not be considering costs at all is just completely unrealistic.
Appreciate it.
What, 5 minutes? Mr. Coteau for 6.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. Like my colleague opposite, it's pretty exciting stuff. When you see technology and innovation brought into a sector like home building, because homes, I'm assuming, pretty much follow the same formula for the last 100 years, right? And you're disrupting the industry. I'd like to actually speak to all three because I thought all of the information that was provided was very valuable. I'll start with Mr. Royer. You talked about the capital cost, the investment necessary to start an operation like yours. When you're at full capacity, like what are we talking about to make transformative changes? Are we talking about like hundreds of millions of dollars? Like how much does it cost to really build a a full system that does what you do, like at its full maximum potential?
In a limited way, for our first plant, we need to invest about $50 million.
50 million?
And the second plant would be a much larger capacity. We want to go from 2,500 units per year to 20,000 units per year, and that would be north of $100 million. The problem with the investment is the fact that every capital project in the development industry is funded by one owner. And that owner wants to build 100 units of housing. That pro forma and that developer cannot afford to invest in manufacturing equipment on top of that.
Right.
That manufacturing equipment needs to be amortized by 1,000 units of housing.
Right.
So the fact that the industry is not advanced is because of the way projects are being financed, and each project is in an individual business.
So the system that you've developed, it's basically the guts of the house, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So they like if I was a developer, like Mr. Searles, you build the frame of the concrete frames of homes, correct? Like the actual. So let's just say someone built the frame. You send the shipping container over, and it may have one unit or several units inside of it. Is it just one unit per container?
One unit fits on a truck with all the walls flat packed behind it. So one truck is one apartment. And
Okay, one apartment.
yeah.
Okay.
So in our 124 unit project, we're going to build 124 boxes like this, condo
you ship
core,
them
and
out.
ship them to site.
And what savings would the incorporation of your technology, is it more about speed, or is it about saving for the actual developer at the end and the end user at the end?
It's both.
It's
We're
both?
going to shave a project from 30 months to 12 months with that technology, and we're going to save money.
Okay. Would you be able to just share with the committee maybe some information about what that package looks like? We can give it to the clerk, and we'll include it like as a. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for being here. And Mr. Searles, the company that you own or you work with in Kingston, the frames that you build. Is it just the concrete modular frames of the homes? Do you build everything inside as well?
Yeah, so we don't finish out the projects, but what we do have is a complete system right from footings to dry shell. So all of the structural components, all the exterior components. So when we hand it over, it's essentially out of the environment. So and we focused our time on rapid construction in that regard. For an example, we have a 16,000 square foot building going up in Kingston that we expect to build in 3 days. We have two 6-story buildings with a parking structure in between that will house 144 units, plus full parking, full amenities, and we would expect that would be done in less than 60 days. So we're focused on speed of delivery and speed of closing the product in, and then handing it over to the developer from there.
So if I was, for hypothetically speaking, if I was purchasing one of your products, what would I get at the end?
So you would, I mean, it depends on what you agree with, but
Yeah.
we're focused on the dry shell. So
The dry
footings, somebody would excavate on site and put down a compacted granular base based on our parameters that we would set out in an engineering design, and we would give the engineering design and all of the install work for a closed building.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
We want to work together.
I was gonna say, you guys seem like it seems like a good fit, right? I was thinking the same thing. Now, how much time do I have left? 1 minute. I'm sorry to our friend online. I had a lot of questions to ask you, but I'm just gonna end here. Is there a mechanism that allows innovative companies like yours to connect with each other?
Connected here
Yeah.
last night, and certainly we want to explore collaboration.
Okay.
And
So you can say our committee helped in forging this relationship.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Okay, well, I think one of the recommendations that may come out of this is that we should look for ways as you know, as a committee to advise the government that perhaps there is a mechanism we can put in place to better connect companies like yours. Yeah, thank you very much for being here.
10 seconds. You seating?
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Coteau.
Thank you,
That's
thank you,
good.
thank you.
That's good. Keeps everybody on time. Madame Shabat pour 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Listen, we sometimes find ourselves in a world where we ask questions where we may not have a lot of knowledge about the issue at hand. When you talk about massive mass timber, concrete, perhaps I'm not fully advised, but my colleague was talking about saving energy, or perhaps there could be announcements spread in Quebec and to give more information about these precast blocks. But overall, in the construction market, residential housing, what is the share of market, say, that you would have? And what would be the obstacles that you face? You talk about the municipalities. Maybe we should set that aside. But what are the other obstacles that you encounter in building? I'd like to hear you all on that, beginning with Mr. Royer. I will answer your first question first. You have our our focus is affordable housing. The market that we chose, it was 6 to 12-story buildings. We don't want to make a luxury condo. We don't want to customize. Our product is a standardized product to reduce housing cost and to accelerate the construction. These are our two principles. We want to produce a high-quality, durable product in housing, and a product that will be affordable, reasonably priced for young families that are just entering the market. That will allow them to buy a condo. They are quite small. Our units, 124 units in one building, 500 by 14 square feet, one bedroom. If we build something more luxurious or larger, it would cost more. We made that decision logically because we felt that it would make the greatest difference for young families and for families in difficulty. Mr. Zellers? On your market share and the difficulties that you encounter. I hope, Chair, that this is not going to be taken off my time. Don't take it off my 6 minutes, please. You spoke a lot. If I understood you correctly, it is progress is not occurring as quickly as it should. You also want to attach priority to affordability in housing in your building. So I'm asking you, why do you believe that progress is not being made quickly in terms of building material and affordability? affordability also involves durability over time, and that is something that is important. What do you have to say to this?
So I think when we really look at where the housing crisis started, it wasn't that long ago, where houses were actually affordable. It was in the last probably 6 to 8 years that housing prices really started to climb. And it is also where the supply of housing started to drop. So when we look at the R&D, or the research and development phase of the new technologies, of products like CondoCore, with Gaetan beside me, and Lodestar, and many others, there's a design phase that has to take place. And that, I know I've been doing this for about 6 years straight on the development of Lodestar. And then when you get it finally to where it's ready for market, and you have that big, long stretch of time where you have to go through the planning processes and permitting processes and all of that, you're now talking 6, 7 years, which is about where we're at right now. So, affordability is going to happen naturally when we manufacture these buildings in a manufacturing type setting. Again, just like the implementation of building cars in a factory, building homes in a factory, you're going to start to see a lot of efficiencies, and you're going to see a lot of challenges overcome by design and by professionals. So I think the affordability aspect is going to be looked after as these things progress, and as we get, pumping these things out of the factories. And I think if we continue to focus our efforts on just that, on doing it smarter and faster, I think that it should solve the issue. I hope that answers your question.
Madame Zerillo for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, it is a very exciting meeting today, and I thank all the witnesses. I'm going to use my time actually for witness Royer. I'm going to say all of my questions up front, and then they could respond would be wonderful. Witness Royer, I've heard you speak many times. You are well recognized and well respected in the community in BC widely. And I wanted your opinion on a couple of other items as well. One was the precarious work for tradespeople right now, how it's precarious work and how it's not work that's particularly appealing to young people, and why is that they're not choosing it as a career path in your experience. Also, how can your product address accessibility? It was mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, and I know I've heard you speak before around accessibility, not just for your product and what you build, but also for jobs within organizations like yours. And then the environmental impacts are very interesting. How does something like the prefabrication affect or help us meet our climate goals? And then I would ask if you have had the opportunity to meet with the housing minister federally, and if not, I would certainly ask that the Liberal parliamentary secretary that sits on this committee could make that happen. Go ahead, Witness Royer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess as a young military engineer, I worked, building trenches and working in the rain. There's something really rewarding about physical work, and it's attractive to young people. What's not attractive to young people is the fact that construction jobs are part of a gig industry. They are hired by subcontractor for a specific project. These young folks who have gone through institutes of technology to learn their trade end up working for a month on a particular job, and then they're laid off for a few weeks while the subcontractor is looking for another project. Subcontractors get asked to lower their bid for the next job they take, and they offer lower wages. In some cases, they ask those young folks in the construction industry to bid for the work that they're going to be doing. They're going to end up, working a 10-hour shift and invoicing for 8 hours. So it's a difficult, highly competitive industry. In our plant, we're going to offer permanent jobs with benefits, and we're going to offer a clean and stable work environment. So I think as well, as we grow, we want to get to the point where standardization and industrialization of housing is such that we can build a plant for 20,000 units per year, and then that offers a career path for these young folks within a company or within the modular industry. We hope to be copied by others. To address the other question about accessibility, in our 124 units, 5 units are fully accessible, and we do have different types of condo core, some with fully accessible bathrooms. All of our units are going to be adaptable, and we're working with the Rick Hansen Society on the design. Within the plant, the construction sites typically are unwelcoming and treacherous. It's muddy. There's ladders to climb to get to the next floor. In our plant, we offer a welcoming environment, and we're going to have jobs that are dealing with pre-assembly of components, for example. Those jobs are going to be at a workbench and making it easy to accommodate a person with disabilities. There's no ladders, no heavy lifting. This is done by machines, and we can certainly modify a workstation to accommodate a person so that they can still work with specific physical ability being looked after. I know you didn't ask. The other feature that I think is bringing equity is we have a First Nations First procurement policy. Lastly, I'm going to say that our focus on mass timber as the structural element of what we do is going to help to lower the carbon footprint. And inside of a plant, we're going to utilize every bit of wood and every bit of material that we can and reduce waste. Construction sites are typically really wasteful. And we have, there's a project, BCIT housing project for students that's been completed recently. And one of the things that every contractor remarked upon was that they had just one bin for the project, as opposed to having all kinds of garbage being picked up every day with packaging material. And that's because they use a mass timber structure. Similarly, I think my colleague with their product, they're not going to have any forms to take apart and throw away. It's a product that's going to be much more sustainable.
Thank you. And I just wanted to ask, have you had the opportunity to get to the housing minister, or has a presentation been able to happen?
I haven't yet.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, I'll add to Mr. Couteau's comments that it would be great to be able to maybe hook up all of these witnesses with our housing minister. And as I said, the PS sits on this committee, so I'm sure they can help make that happen. Thank you.
Ms. Falk for 5 minutes. My apology.
That's okay, Chair. Thank you so much. Mr. Searles, if I've said that somewhat correctly, I just want to follow up on a comment you had made to an earlier question. You had mentioned that housing prices have been up in the last 6 to 8 years. I'm just wondering, what were the factors, or what are the factors that contributed to the drop in the housing construction, from your perspective?
From our perspective, recently it would be, well, obviously financial reasons, interest rates, and banking issues, and then I guess it's return on investment for developers, right? If you have to spend, I talked with a developer the other day, and for 2 5-story buildings to house 144 people, similar to the one I spoke about earlier, he's looking at development costs and building permit fees of over $1 million. So that's the issue as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, in a previous meeting, we had heard from a witness that the biggest barrier to innovation for home builders was the risk related to taking on new technologies. So I'm just wondering, would you agree that home builders are risk adverse towards new technologies for this reason?
I think the current climate kind of adds to that risk. I think that home builders or developers are not really risk adverse. I think it's the nature of the business that they're in. But I do think when they go to CMHC or when they go to their financiers, and that's where the risk adversity comes in. I think it's more that level. I think that the institutions, the banks, the government institutions like CMHC, I think they need to get their head around what it is that they're willing to insure and what they're not, and not put everything in the same category. For an example, our system is no different than a cast-in-place concrete system. It's strong, it's rugged, it's built in plants, but it's labeled in the CMHC's eyes the same as a construction trailer or something along those lines. So for modularity. And it is not the same at all. It's a completely different system, and I think we need more education on that front and some more clarity with some of the bigger institutions.
When you refer to the climate, the recent climate, are you referring to high interest rates and just the unpredictability that we're in right now?
I would say the time to get something done. If you're investing as a developer, for an example, you're doing architectural drawings and engineering and all of this stuff, and you're developing the land, so you're paying surveyors, you're paying all of the entities that it takes to get something ready for the planning stage and through the planning stage. When that money is sitting out there 1 year, 2 year, 3 years before you can even put a shovel in the ground, that is where a lot of the problem is. That's where a lot of the risk is. People would rather do different things or take on quicker projects or even different projects altogether than invest that amount of money for that amount of time before they can even look at getting a return on their investment.
And that's a lot of capital that's tied up.
It's huge.
Just waiting.
It is
waiting behind red tape and bureaucracy.
It is what's stunning our growth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chair, I would like to pass my remaining time to MP Aitchison, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falk, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually, Mr. Searle's comments were actually a perfect segue to what I'd like to do next. I'd like to move a motion that's on notice, and that motion reads that with respect to her recent appointment as President and CEO of CMHC on June 14th, the committee hold one meeting for 2 hours with the following witness from the CMHC: Colleen Volk, President and CEO of CMHC.
The clerk has advised me the motion had proper notice, so Mr. Aitchison has moved a motion to the floor. Discussion? Mr. Fragas-Catos?
Yeah, I and we have no problem with that. That's quite reasonable. I would just say that the committee, though, has already agreed to a program in terms of focus, and don't want to put that particular have CMHC come before we've had the chance to look at the other issues we've already agreed to study. So I wouldn't give it priority is what I'm saying.
Ms. Gray and then Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and the motion doesn't say that it takes priority over anything else. It's just that it goes in what we're discussing. We know that we've got a planning meeting coming up, and so it goes in that discussion. We know that we've got other business that we've agreed to, like ministers coming and all of that, but this would then be, one of those studies that we would look afterwards just for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Aitchison.
I was going to say the same thing that Ms. Gray said, but maybe I just read the motion again to point out that it didn't actually prioritize this over anything else, and not sure why Mr. Fragas-Catos thought that. But Ms. Gray said it very eloquently.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we vote on accepting it? Yes. Okay, record a vote then on the motion moved by Mr. Aitchison.
Mr. Fragas-Catos?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Coteau?
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes?
Mrs. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Morans?
In favor.
Mr. Aitchison?
Yes.
Madame Chabot?
We.
Ms. Zarrillo?
Yes.
Here we are, unanimous. Okay. Thank you. The motion's been adopted. Order, members. Hold your enthusiasm. Just for the benefit of the witnesses, Mr. Aitchison was in his prerogative to do that motion, so we'll return. I'm going to conclude as we're going into with Mr. Collins and Madame Chabot and Madame Zarrillo. So, Mr. Collins for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the witnesses. Mr. Royer, I'll start with you. You talked about in your opening the off-site concept requires huge capital investment. And you talked about the cost of your first plant, and your second plant in Ontario seems to be a bit more ambitious with a larger price tag. I compare the situation we're dealing with the housing crisis to what we're doing on the environment. So we have climate crisis, and all levels of government have looked to invest in changing the way the automotive industry builds their vehicles and the type of vehicles that they build. And we've made huge investments in partnership with our private partners to make that shift. And we certainly have, I don't want to diminish or downplay the investments that we've made in the area of encouraging industrialization in the housing sector. I've been a recipient in my riding with some companies, Faro Industries. We provided, I think, just over $3 million to assist with the capital requirements that they have, as well as new employment. And then Beck is a local provider that's received resources as well in the Ancaster area from FedDev Ontario. So I highlight those to advise that and to advertise that it's already happening, but I think it has to happen on a greater scale. When I compare the automotive industry investments with the housing crisis and the investments we're making there, they kind of pale in comparison. Can you relay to the committee, because this meeting is all about driving recommendations and looking to change the way that we do business, what recommendations do you have for the government as it relates to making investments in those strategic areas in terms of whether it's plant operations or making the plants that you have currently larger than they are to increase capacity? What recommendations do you have in that regard?
I guess one of the recommendations that we've talked internally in my company and also with colleagues is that most of the grant programs are reimbursement, and I think that relies on the private sector to make the expense, and then you get reimbursed, and it's always a portion of the investment that you've made that gets reimbursed until you make further investments. For young companies with ideas that are really disturbing the industry in terms of the advancement, having the government front more funds upfront and not wait for
From a grant perspective, not loan.
From a grant. Yep. Or grant or loan, it would not really matter, but to front more money to allow these companies to do demonstration projects, allow them to do proof of concept. So that is the part that is the most difficult for private investors for venture capital to consider. So you can only do so much with a business plan until you have a unit that people can walk in and see what's happened. And secondly, I think the amounts that are required for modular manufacturing are of a scale, as you pointed out, that is very large. And the $10 million from the BC government that we received, we're highly appreciative of that. We think it was courageous for them to provide this under the Manufacturing Jobs Fund, but we need more than that.
Okay.
And I think my colleagues in the industry would agree that the investments need to be bigger than that.
Okay. I'll switch gears to, once you have those plants, you need some business certainty in terms of that people are purchasing those units. And one of the things the National Housing Strategy has done is it's certainly delivered in that regard, at least to many suppliers in Southern Ontario, where I'm from, as it relates to the Rapid Housing Initiative, of course, has flowed through municipalities and nonprofits, and then they've turned to your sector to purchase units and dip their toe in the water in the modular area. And I think the Affordable Housing Fund has done that as well. But there's no certainty that with the change in government, and that happens once in a while, that the national housing strategy may or may not be there. And of course, our government has shown a commitment to providing those programs on an annual basis. How important are they from a business certainty perspective and a revenue perspective, maybe not necessarily just to your business, but to the industry as a whole, in order to ensure that you're going to be able to turn the lights on next week because people are purchasing those modular units?
Yeah. I don't think that in the current climate, you need to worry about the pipeline of projects. We have a very strong pipeline of projects. So we do have a first demonstration project that is funded. What I think, one of the things that I've heard yesterday as well, the Rapid Housing Initiative is not accepting applications anymore. That's something that we would welcome if it was to reopen to applications. Not to repeat myself, but the amounts are something that needs to be looked into as well.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et 30.
2.5 minutes, Madame Chabot. Thank you, Mr. Royer. For workers who came here to testify, we heard someone from the FTQ in Quebec, and you know how it's regulated. The worker in question insisted on 2 things. In terms of construction, you have to adapt the areas, the skills areas. Workers are part of the solution. And you have innovation on your side, new plans, but it has to be anchored to something. So you have to, in reducing the cost of the labor you spoke to, but you also have to be able to increase the skills of your labor force. So you've got workers versus the share occupied by construction itself. Well, in fact, one of the problems that we deal with in all the provinces, I'm not too aware of what goes on in Quebec, but construction workers who want to retire, I would say, are going to cause a major problem in the industry. We will not have an access to new construction workers. They are fewer in number. Fewer students choose construction as a career. So there is a problem. In urban centers, contractors have a great deal of difficulty finding employees to do the construction itself. And our project is to move the jobs from urban centers to Williams Lake, which is a rural community where they need jobs and where workers can be trained in the possibility of construction work. So we are offering a solution that is very well aligned with the perspective of the workers themselves. Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
To close. Madame Zarrillo.
I thank you, Mr. Semenya. Thank you. So my last 2.5 minutes, I again am going to ask witness Royer, and I thank all the other witnesses. It's just been so much great information today. You introduced the Rapid Housing Initiative and how desperately municipalities are interested in more of that rapid housing. And I think about social housing and the opportunity on the federal land sites. We know that we have one in Port Moody, 45 Mary Street, that was a post office. What are the opportunities for modular on these federal lands in regards to partners and opportunities? And then anything else you'd like to share with this committee before we close today?
I think there's many individuals in various levels of government who are taking a look at their own lands and seeing a number of projects, and it starts from smaller municipalities. District of Sechelt is looking at road ends, that is roads that are unopened that could become a construction site for a new housing, as well as on a larger scale, large areas, large parking areas at BC Ferries that are being considered for housing, large federal lands that are being considered for housing. So that's most welcome by the industry, because it lowers the cost. If you don't have to pay for the land and then pay for the holding costs of that land for the 2-3 years that it takes to plan a project, that's a huge saving for the construction industry, and that's an opportunity for us to build more public housing and affordable housing.
Well, thank you so much. And I will ask Mr. Seals then, if you wouldn't just mind, is there anything else you'd like to share with this committee before we end today?
I would just like to encourage everybody. I mean, when Mr. Couteau gave me a call and asked if we would love to speak, I thought it was a great honor, but I also thought it was a great burden to share what I feel are my experiences and why our country is under this pressure right now. And there's families out there that are doing everything right. They're working, they're taking their kids to daycare, they're taking them to gym classes and everything else, and they can't afford a home right now. And I would just like to encourage everybody to find a solution, whatever it is. Get rid of the roadblocks in construction. And the private sector is the one that's going to solve this problem. They're the ones that they're going to invent the products like Condo Core and like Lodestar. They're going to build the homes, they're going to build the buildings. But it's up to our leadership, and that's this committee, or folks like this committee. It's up to our leadership to clear the way and let us do it. So that would be my final statement.
Thank you to our three witnesses for appearing today. With that, we'll suspend while we transition to the business portion of this meeting. And Madame Zarrillo, you'll have to log into the new. So again, thank you to all three witnesses for appearing. We'll suspend for about 4 minutes. Suspend.